And just like that, we are back. New continent, same gloomy weather, beautiful landscape, but we found ourselves 11 hours away on the plane here, South Africa, Dolstrom. And the big question is, why would we travel 11 hours on a plane just to train? I'm gonna say there's three key factors, okay? 1, altitude, we'll go into that a little bit later. 2, warm weather, when the sun's shining. And 3, for me personally, it's just embracing the monk life. Now, I think we should delve in a bit further because the big question is why altitude? But first, check out our place. It's like going back in time, genuinely is. And I wanna show you a few things because it really is like going back in time. Now, we are gonna get onto the good stuff, but I've got to show you where we're staying because I find it fascinating. Sorry about the low light, but check this out. Believe me, thinking the same thing. I'm gonna show you my room, but I'm not gonna show you where everyone else is because I don't wanna go into their rooms while they're not here. But this is where I'm staying. It's pretty nice. I've really lucked out. We did rock, paper, scissors towards the end, or flipped a coin, sorry, and I ended up with the nice place. But let's get back to it. Next up, why altitude? Its benefits, and why I would leave my beautiful family to come out here. Some good reasons for it. Let's tuck in. Now, in summary, we're training at 2,000 meters. So 2,000 meters above sea level. So it just means that we're putting our body under more stress because there's less oxygen in the air, and it forces your body to adapt and create more red blood cells. So that's effectively what altitude training is in a nutshell. It pretty much just improves oxygen delivery when you return that back down to sea level so that your body's more optimum. Why Dolstrom? Mainly because it's kind of high enough to really get a benefit, not too high to put your body in too much of a deficit, and warm weather, good training, similar time zone, and you just get those real big benefits that you find at altitude. Warm weather being the first one. So I'm gonna say warm weather, for me, body just reacts better. It's crucial for keeping the muscles warm and loose, and 2,000 meters, it's good. It gets you away, it's what we need for training. And lastly, full monk life. This is when I go into that phase of training where I'm just completely locked in, focused on the sleeping, the training, the eating, and it's where you just can make some really big gains. Being in these environments where you're surrounded by people with the same goal, it really does bring you up those little 1%. And of course in the winter in the UK as it's turning, because I think it was 6 degrees when we left, it's not pleasant, so it really does allow you just to really home in and do what you need to do and make some serious progress in and around people that are like-minded, striving for the same goal. Let's come back to the travel essentials. Okay, so these are the must-haves on training camp, for me anyway. Now, these are up to, I mean, it's very much based on what I prefer. So first one for me, let's talk on a travel essential. First one's gonna be an eye mask, and not just any eye mask. This isn't sponsored. I use the Menta eye mask because it's got like the donut shape, and it means that when you're flying, especially, if you couple these up with a pair of earplugs, and then you couple it up with I've got the headphones inside, but the ones that don't go in ear, they just hover over the lobe. You can get full blackout, you can open your eyes, and it's just like being in a dark room. It's just like sitting on a couch, and you really can get away from the idea of being in the plane. Next one for flying is electrolytes. Don't use any electrolytes because electrolytes aren't made to taste good, in my opinion. I think there really should be massive emphasis on your electrolytes being good at hydrating you. So we've got 1,000 milligrams of sodium per sachet, 250 milligrams of potassium. That's not particularly high, it's the sodium we're counting here. 100 milligrams of magnesium, 50 milligrams of calcium, and 0 sugars. Now remember, if you want electrolytes to do their job, they don't necessarily have to taste good. These are spot on for traveling. So flying, electrolytes, eye mask, earbuds. Then of course, can't forget about compression socks. I'm wearing them now, God's sake. Just been on a run and I've got them on. So I kind of live in them. I just wear the calf sleeves because that just helps reduce swelling in and around there. Shoes is a simple one. I keep it simple. These are my absolute go-to, Nike Invincibles. I don't think you can get a better shoe. I actually probably wear these a bit too much. The cushion on them, they're quick enough. They're not super quick. They're not Vaporfly quick, but they're quick. So I actually use these for almost everything at the moment. And I actually think they might be the reason why I'm able to do a lot of mileage now. I think they're a big contributing factor. I haven't found a shoe better than this that can not necessarily be the fastest, but allowing me to do a little bit of everything. I actually do some track sessions in these. I struggle compared to when I put on the Vaporflies, but I just find them a brilliant shoe. Faster work, Vaporfly. I'm a Nike athlete, but for me, world's best shoe. I just don't think you can match this shoe in general. I don't necessarily wear the Alpha personally, but the Vaporfly is just the bee's knees. We have our Garmin must-have and heart rate monitor. Heart rate monitor is super important. So what we do is we get a baseline when we're at home we did some testing and we had a baseline of what our heart rate zones were on easy runs, tempos and everything else. And then we'll use that same baseline so that when we come onto altitude, we stick to those zones. So the idea is that when we are using the heart rate, if our tempos are at 150, we want to keep them at 150. And that might mean at home, we might be running 5-minute pace, but up here, we might be running 6-minute pace, but we stick to our zones because it means that we can stay within within our limit. We also then take our lactates. My monitor is inside somewhere. We take our lactates is where you prick your finger or your ear and you just get a reading of your bloods. That's a good way, but normally you do that after a run. And then lastly, for monitoring health and fitness, I also use a SATS monitor, and I'll use this every morning, and it's almost like a readiness. So this will kind of just tell me how ready my body is. So now I'm on 98. Anything over 95 is okay, we kind of say it's good. Anything going low 90s, we're a bit more concerned. It means we either need to proceed with caution or we need to back off a little bit. So SATS monitor is just a good way just to figure out how ready your body is. A little bit like the readiness you get on sort of like these bigger brands like Whoop and yada yada. This is just a different version of taking that. Lastly, let's come on to supplements. So supplements is another big one too that we have to factor in, because I mean, I keep forgetting, look at these views. What do I take? Personally, I use vitamin D, magnesium, omegas, and electrolytes. Is that technically a supplement? I guess so, yeah. So vitamin D, magnesium, and omegas. The reason why I use them is because I've taken a blood test before and I'm always deficient in vitamin D, always deficient in magnesium, and omegas, I just like them because they're good for sort of brain health, heart function, joints, etc. They're just like a really good supplement to take. Vitamin D is good for bone health, and it's key when increasing the mileage, sort of your intensity, especially during the winter. If you are mixed race, you are more likely to be deficient in it, regardless of where you are. As soon as those winter months come in, you should be supplementing it anyway. I was here in South Africa last year. I remember taking a blood test when I came back. I was in the sun for 4 weeks and I took a blood test and I was still deficient in vitamin D, despite being sunburnt, despite peeling, and despite feeling cooked, literally cooked. Yeah, cooking like the whole way. So vitamin D is an absolute must-have. What brand should you use? Entirely up to you. I use Pure Sport because it's designed for athletes. I like the idea that it's designed for athletes. I use the Pure Sport vitamin D, Pure Sport magnesium, and of course their electrolytes, I believe, are the best on the market. Now, why magnesium? Again, another one. It aids in muscle recovery and prevents cramps, which is essential for sort of sessions, and it helps sleep. That's another key factor. That's why, another reason. And omegas, I mean, in a nutshell, it's heart health, brain health, joint health, and it's known for reducing inflammation, which obviously helps on the harder days, especially when we're increasing the volume. And especially now, me being a mileage junkie, 70 mile a week and all that, up from 25, we'll see where that ends. Hopefully it's a good thing. It's a big jump, but we'll see where we end up. And I guess these are all of the things coupled in. And lastly, let's not forget sunnies. Absolutely, these are my Nike casual ones, but they're polarized. Polarized is like the key thing. One thing you don't want to be doing is, and it is important, you really don't want to be squinting the whole time, because if you're squinting, for me when I'm frowning, I tend to find that my shoulders then come up. And if your shoulders are coming up, it's not what you want. It's really not what you want, because your shoulders are coming up, you're not able to expand your stomach as much, and you can end up in panic breathing. And that's more likely to happen if you're at altitude. So relax it, allow yourself to relax a bit more, and hopefully if the frown's down, the shoulders will follow and the rest of the body will follow suit. The moment you're squinting and stuff, you can find it can affect performance. Different people, for me that is, I'm not saying it's going to be the same for you, but sunnies are just good to stop the squinting. Helps you relax. Relax is good, relax is fast. Key essentials, it's just basics, isn't it? And lastly, there are 8 key facts of why you would consider altitude. So the main one will be, increases your red blood cell production later. So the second would be improved oxygen efficiency, kind of ties into it a little bit. You'll increase your VO2 max, kind of a given. You will actually increase like your natural EPO production. I think we should go into this one a little bit more because there is also a grey area, but you produce it naturally as your body does. It will enhance your lactate threshold. Everybody's talking about zone 2 at the moment. Everyone's talking about lactates, zones, all that kind of yada yada. We can go into that a little bit, but not too much, because that's definitely over spoken about. It sounds crazy, but it increases your mental toughness, because you're having to focus so much more because it's so much harder. As wild as it sounds, it's a lot harder here. And then of course you reduce the damage and inflammation with proper acclimatization. So when we go down again, our body will be under less stress because it's been used to working so much harder, which is why your first 10 days are so key here, because when you drop back down again, your body's under so much less stress because it's suddenly it's getting pumped full of more oxygen that it hasn't gotten used to. Because you've acclimatized to less oxygen, when you then pump it full of more, your body's it's able to function far better. And of course the last part leads into the 7th point, is that the adaptation sort of persists after returning to sea level. So you'll have physiological adaptations, like increased red blood cells for several weeks after returning to sea level. And it's just effectively, look at it as like an altitude boost, but this boost is kind of like, it can happen at different points. I guess we should probably go into each point because it's pointless me saying all of those things. The first one we referred to was the increased red blood cell production. So no, effectively, so at higher altitudes, the air contains less oxygen, which causes the body to produce more red blood cells to compensate for this. And then the increase of the red blood cells allows for better oxygen transport, which then in theory theory, increases your aerobic performance. This adaptation is especially beneficial in endurance events, which is why you'll get people that are doing the longer distances, like just mentioned, cycling and swimming. But I don't think I'd like to swim at altitude because it's hard enough to breathe as it is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that one. And of course, improved oxygen efficiency. So it's training in an environment with less oxygen, which then allows the body to adapt, become more efficient when there's more readily oxygen available. But the next point I wanted to get right, because I didn't want to speak about something that I didn't have enough knowledge on. I didn't want to give my opinion, I wanted to give pure fact. So now, because it's more of a grey area, so the body naturally, when exposed to low oxygen levels at altitude, it will naturally produce more EPO. So effectively you'll get a boost that when there's less oxygen available at high altitudes, the kidneys produce more EPO. Now this is what I'm reading, this is off a script here. So the kidneys will produce more EPO to stimulate the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. This increases the amount of oxygen that can be transported to the muscles and organs. Huge gains for endurance athletes. The benefits of that will be altitude training can help improve endurance, speed, strength and recovery, of course after that adaptation period, and athletes can benefit from the extra red blood cells for up to 4 months after returning to normal altitudes. So remember when I said that's why you have to keep coming back for the top up, because it's almost making yourself like more superhuman each time. That is why when you're doping tested and you have to fill out a form, and within that form it says have you been at altitude or any simulation recently, and it's because we have something called a blood passport, so they'll measure our levels from each point, and if you're having a yo-yo effect it doesn't look good on paper, whereas if you're at sea level, and if you're having a yo-yo effect and you've been at altitude, it can explain increases or decreases in different levels. So it's one of the reasons in our doping tests why you have to declare if you've been at altitude recently, because it will buffer your levels, because every production and the values that they'll be checking against won't add up. And then of course training methods, the optimal approach, scripted remember, the optimal approach for altitude is to train at 1200 meters minimum or less when you're actually training, but then to live much higher, so to live at 2,100 or higher to live. So the idea is train low, live high, so you can still get the quality work in, which is why in places like Flagstaff you live at like over 2,000, but then most people drop down to Secunda and where are the other places, Cottonwood and a few others that are much lower. We do the same in San Moritz. We train up at San Moritz, but for the quality you drop down to Chiavenna, which is much lower, and it just means that you can then get all of the benefits from training up high, drop down low, Bob's your uncle. I think everywhere has the same. Front remo, do you drop? No, front remo is one of the few that you don't drop. Potch is at a level where there's no reason to drop, and Dolstrom you just stay high because there's not really any tracks nearby. But yeah, so naturally that's one of the reasons why you would come to altitude. Red blood cell production in a nutshell. And yeah, I guess rather than going into any more, kind of talked myself out there. But in summary, that's kind of why we come to altitude, and it's why athletes spend sort of several weeks here at a time training here, because the gains are, like we said, up to 4 months. And if you can get the gains for up to 4 months, you can drop down, feel superhuman, and then come back again to just grinding yourself into the ground again. And it's why we're out here for, I'm here just under 5 weeks. We'll then come back for 2 weeks over the Christmas period, and I'm back out again for another 4 weeks. But for the next camp, we will focus on Potchefstroom, which is about 1,300 meters, so about 700 or 800 less than this, but we'll be doing a lot more quality work. So the idea of this camp is we're building a base. You've heard the cliche, building a house. Think about us digging our foundations super deep right now, because we want to build our house eventually. So we're building our foundation super deep, super wide, so eventually when we go to Potch in January, we'll then start building that house. And the idea will be we'll just start getting a little bit sharper, a little bit faster, and then the next camp after that in April is when we'll really start to punch things. So that's when you really sort of want to get quick to ready yourself to start putting the roof on that house, if you like, so that we're ready to just sort of really be strong. But again, we can't build that house before we've laid the foundation. And the foundation is the hardest part, because when you come on camp, it's so easy to bin yourself every time. And I've done it every year. I've been myself too early. So my aim for this camp, don't get injured. Just keep telling myself Potch is my next camp where I want to do a little bit more, and then just take it from there. But for now, I think I've talked you out. I've talked myself out. We're here in camp. There's a ton more action coming up, and you'll see. But if you've enjoyed any of this, think about subscribing. It helps me. I've set myself a challenge to try and grow this channel to 10,000 subscribers before the end of February, I believe. End of February or end of January. It's a big ask because it's obviously growing. It is growing a little bit slower than I thought it might, but I'm not putting enough effort in. So I want to try and give you guys a little bit more. So by telling you the benefits of altitude, maybe it's something you'll consider. And again, we're going to Potch in January. Anybody wanting to come, same like this one, because we've got a few guys meeting us next week that are coming out to Dolstrom. Anybody interested, let us know. There's always room. As long as you're willing to work, train hard, there's always room. Until next time.